Hello, Ben Mize here again, and boy, don't you love Steve Quayle? He really has a ring to him. But I was going to talk at this point about, because he reminded me, um, just the unbelievable degree to which most people are in uh, La La Land, and it's not to be insulting, it's deadly to your soul and to the country. I mean, we should never lose our humility and do what the devil did and think himself more worthy than he was and fit to break the laws of love. We must follow um, but people are wanting to watch and play and have a good time before God has said it's time for a good time. It was the devil that told, and you see this in what they entertain us with. It was all the Satanism they entertain us with, I should add. It was the devil that said it's time to have a good time before Christ returns, because before Christ returns, the devil and the devil's minions are still ruling over the kings of the earth, and there's much to be done because Christ hadn't done away with it all yet. And so to not notice that and try to pleasure yourself in light of how much our brothers and sisters are going through all over the world. Not that we shouldn't have some feasting for strength, but to ignore our weighty duties to God and creation, where our world is in such pain, is such treason. And there will be so many people that all Americans will have to say, well, I didn't get to them because, and then hopefully have a good enough reason and say that to Christ on his judgment throne and God. Because America was blessed, and we were to be a blessing. We were to be the full blessing God expected. And to not fulfill the totality of our individual calling means there's bodies we're going to have to explain to Jesus and not have a good enough reason to explain it with. the third world was born in a ditch with no money and no hope, more or less. They had enough hope that if they'd have done uh, mighty acts of love and valor, they could have gotten their country fixed. But it was still time for the West to be sensible about helping the rest of the world figure out how to politically and morally repent. So they wouldn't be born in a ditch and starve to death by the billions. And it wouldn't have been that hard. And you make a lot of good friends doing that kind of stuff. And in fact, it's well worth the effort. And you don't feel so grimy anymore after you do that. And so there's really no rational reason to not do that and go on political, moral, and educational mission trips and show the light that God allowed the West to the rest of the world, and put our city on a hill and not cover it up with a bushel basket. And never mind clean up abortion and not let our governments do all these crazy wars. But there's lots of things God very well could judge America over. Europe's already getting judged. They got a lot of people whose culture is criminal to immigrate there, and Europe is having a real tough time. It really wasn't worth it to turn their backs on God, because before that happened, I'd heard Europe was really not interested in Jesus and God compared to what they used to be. And so it's the old conundrum of repent or die a slow, horrible death, followed by being judged an incompetent coward bound for hell. And it's time to every day in your heart badger God and badger Jesus time and again, asking, what exactly am I supposed to be doing? Then find spare time to not entertain yourself and read the Bible and think about it and watch some conspiracy theorists online and start getting some ideas about how to push back against the devil's minions that rule over the kings of the earth. And God will keep you alive as long as you're supposed to be alive. And you might not be bound for hell anymore. But boy, that gospel of lawlessness, the doctrine of demons, is really just taking over everything. People don't put up with sound doctrine anymore. They don't want to hear you preach about the Ten Commandments. It's too painful. They think. Of course, the big one was to love God with all your being, and the test of whether or not you loved God with all your being was when you noticed the devil worshippers were running around. Did you talk to the men that held power in your society, like the voters, and get it to where you cleaned up the mess? So now that we have social media, you can talk to enough people, people will care and look and talk. We can actually get enough independent journalists, well, that's a crummy word, independent truthers, to vote in the people that will clean up the mess. If we can do it in time. And that's a question. It's a big question. But you know, we got to do our duty to God's law by the grace of God, to have done what Christ said to do, to have built our house on rock, to withstand the judgment and not be destroyed in it, and cast into hell for cowardice, etc. And whether or not the rest of the country stops being a bunch of cowards and lazy half-assers, and that's really the meat of it all. Is will you pray to God and read the Bible and think about it and ask, what am I supposed to be doing with all this stuff that all the conspiracy theorists are talking about? And follow through on the clues God gives to you. So that's all you need to know at this point if you're serious about your salvation. So, well, God bless.